Welcome, everyone. It has been a while, and I am so excited to bring to you the topic of self-care, where you can learn how to take care of yourself amidst all the things that are going on in your life. I'm Troy Faddis, Clinical Supervisor.
And I'm Maddie Liebing. I'm the Clinical Director at Legacy Outdoor Adventures in Juniper Canyon.
Hey there, everyone. My name is David Weeder, and I'm one of the therapists in our men's program at Legacy.
So let's talk about self-care. I think one of the most important aspects of self-care is learning to practice self-compassion. We easily talk about compassion for other people, especially our family members, those that we love the most, but we don't often direct that back to ourselves. And in particularly, we get pretty rigid around our own mistakes. I often ask folks if they had a close friend or a really close family member going through the exact same thing that they're going through right now, what advice would they give that friend? And usually in their answers, they will show so much more forgiveness and so much more understanding than in any of the responses that they will ever give themselves. So learning to forgive oneself for not being perfect and for the normal things that we all do is an important part of self-compassion and self-care. I see you both nodding your heads.
We disagree. What you're saying, yeah, this is good. That's good, because we have a tendency to be harder on ourselves than anybody else is hard on us. And so often we get caught in what Brene Brown talks about, is that shame storming of just going into this cascade of, I'm okay, now I'm not okay, now I'm all the way down here. And it's like it happens really quickly. And that's when you're in that place, you can't really do self-care. You can't allow yourself to have the space to be able to take care of yourself. So this is really an important place to start when you're talking about self-care.
I don't know if it'll come up somewhere later in the discussion, but I think this idea of self-care and self-compassion, thinking about taking care of yourself so that you are actually able to take care of others. I think there's a strong tendency for people to try and show their love by taking care of others. But if you don't take care of yourself first, you actually don't have that much to give. You end up just depleted. So that can be a hard pill to swallow for a lot of us.
Yeah. The next is having a growth mindset. In the Arbinger work that we ask everyone to do, sometimes in the Arbinger program, they talk about having a learner's mind or a beginner's mind. And having a growth mindset is coming into it, really just coming to learn, not bringing what you already know. And I think that when you apply that to yourself, so I don't have this criticalness of what I wish I'd already known or what I think I should already be able to accomplish, but just looking for growth.
And we all have lots of bad habits, right? So accepting this is where we're at and being willing to start from where you actually are rather than where you think you should be.
And I think when I taught this with the parents, when we taught this to the parents, the three of us, I think I jumped around. Maybe I'll do that real quick.
Oh my God.
But
where are we going?
We're going here. I really like the wise mind slide, where we can really try to look and watch ourselves. Maybe not a lot of you aren't practiced at watching yourself. It's not something we normally do. But if you can watch your own thoughts and watch your own feelings, you may notice that it can look like this. I have an emotional mind. And I probably have a rational mind. In fact, if you think about it, you probably are pretty aware of your rational mind. Maybe not as much of your emotional mind. Maybe for some of you, it's the opposite. But there's parts in the middle that have parts of both of those. And I think that that's some place where we can have that growth mindset, is not being too far to the left, not being too far to the right, but really just being open to the experiences experiences we're having itself. The third one, flipping back, is really timely. That the time of this recording, we all just got back from Thanksgiving. And the next one is expressing gratitude. And I thought it was interesting this week as I've been watching a lot of gratitude being expressed, and even in a research article that talked about the intersect of what science says about expressing gratitude. I need one more. Being able to express gratitude really does change some of the neurology in our mind to help us feel happier, healthier, and more aware of the positive.
Yeah, we're doing an experiment this last week of finding things to be grateful for and sharing that with other people and telling other people that you're grateful for them too. And to see what that did to change your way of seeing things and your mindset, basically is, and it was pretty interesting. It's like, in the middle of COVID, it's like there's so many things not to be grateful for. There's so many things that are such a pain in the butt. But when you start listing things, you go, oh, wow, yeah, that's pretty cool. There's that and this and that. And you can feel a shift. You can feel a shift internally that, goes all the way through your body, I think. You start noticing that and expressing it.
Step 4 is find the right level of generosity. And as I was preparing for this today, I was thinking about that and going back to I have the reference there where I found these at the bottom. And I thought that was interesting as I've been thinking about the advice I've been giving clients this week about how they want to do it all, especially around the holidays. They feel this need that they got to do everything perfect. And we talked about being able to say it's not about right or wrong or good or bad, but sometimes it's about good or better or best. And just saying, how much time can I put towards this thing? And not trying to put all my energy into the one place that I think is the first priority, then have nothing left for the other priorities in my life. Find that right level of generosity and energy, and making sure that there's enough energy left over that I have some for me. Because I think that we give it all and not give it to ourselves. Go ahead.
Right. Yeah, I think it's particularly important for parents because, with a parent, from the time the baby is born and right on through into their adulthood, it's like our priorities are obviously going to be to making sure that this life, this new little person is going to be okay. And there's so many parents that I work with that have gotten tipped over on this. And it's like everything's about taking care of the child and taking care of the family. And it even sometimes gets in the way of them growing up and becoming adults because they're doing so much to do that. And it is generous and it is needed, but there's, like you said, finding that balance of, if you, just like David said, if you don't take care of yourself, you don't have enough energy to do the things that really need to be done. But to try to also allow people to take care of themselves, as they get older and stuff too. So it's an interesting process, I think.
This might be a bit tangential, but I think about this step 4 here and where it intersects with compassion. Sometimes people don't realize that they can't do everything, right? They think I should be able to do everything. Everything that I want, perhaps, will be possible. And I think a piece of self-compassion is learning that you can't do everything. No one can. Even if you have all the money in the world, you still can't do everything you want to do. There's always going to be a compromise somewhere. So looking at yourself and being okay with that and not sort of stressing yourself, freaking out that you can't do everything, or stressing yourself out because you're trying to do everything. But taking a step back and looking again at your priorities, like you said, Troy, and allotting time to each of those priorities intentionally.
Mm-hmm. And it happens so natural. We don't even stop and know what we're doing, which is why we need to do step 5, which is be mindful. Mm-hmm. Being able to stop and observe and see what we're doing, not just observe, I think the key part of mindfulness is observing without judging. I think a lot of us observe, but the judgment and maybe the shame that we feel from the judgment brings us even deeper into the compulsion to do everything or to keep doing what we're doing. Instead of just being mindful and seeing the impact and realizing that there's choice and that we can choose multiple things. I think the ability to just watch oneself or even watching ourselves can really give us more freedom than when we watch with through the lens of feeling judged.
And a lot of us have really, really active self-critics that are just one of our parts, you know? And so as you're doing something, this dialogue's going on in the back of your head about, well, that was a dumb thing, or, well, that was pretty good, or no, that wasn't good enough, or you should just give up. Why are you bothering? You know? And just that chatter, you know, that goes on, that dialogue of the self-critic telling us, you know, what's really going on. And it's not, it's just a self-critic that's going on in the back of our heads. To be able to be truly mindful, I think, is to be, you know, present, to actually be able to be where you are, and to be grounded, you know, to that, and not be, you know, listening to that chatter. So talk about that.
You know, having a self-critic is something that's there for everybody. I think it's universal. I think some people are more aware of it and some people are less aware of it. Um, some people let it drive them by by always trying to be good. And some people are caught up in avoiding it by not paying attention and just saying, I'm not going to do anything if I can't be good. I think we all have a relationship with that, and I certainly do.
It's
I would say that part of step 5 in being mindful is noticing those judgments of yourself,
Mhm.
noticing the times that happens, and not being critical of that, saying, okay, yeah, I see that I'm doing this. I see that sometimes my self-critic drives me, and thinking it through, giving yourself time to have that chatter in your brain. You know, maybe you get stuck in it. Maybe you have to spend 20, 30 minutes thinking about something, but then realizing that you can let go of it, and not everything you think is real.
I think that's really beautiful. Yeah, not everything you think is real. You should make a poster, David.
There's a teacher of mine from a previous uh, step in my wilderness therapy journey. He's got a bumper sticker that says, "Don't believe everything you think." I think that sums it up pretty well.
Yeah, that's good. That's good.
I know it's moving around again, but that's where I threw this slide in here. I thought that when you said, I think that for us to really have self-care, we need to make peace with our inner critic. I like what Dr. Schwartz talks about in his approach. So does Dr. Hayes in his as well, where it's not just about not believing that part in our minds, which I think does help, but it's also recognizing why that part has the voice in the first place. And it's probably protective.
Mhm.
It is protecting us because of experiences we've had or the way that we perceive the amount of distress in front of us. And sometimes we got to stop and actually thank our inner critic or our adaptive child, however you want to call it, and be able to say to ourselves, you know, that has been keeping me safe or keeping me going or keeping me productive or giving me purpose. And I appreciate the ways that you've been working for me, for us. And here's the bigger picture of all the impact that this has had on me that you probably can't and don't factor in. So I'm choosing to disobey you. I'm choosing not to listen to you. I'm making peace with you. And I have to, the things that you won't let me accept is that inacceptance is what causes the pain, the anxiety or the depression. acceptance is what brings the freedom and the empowerment.
I think that's a tricky one for us to actualize, because especially as we're talking about self-care, there's going to be two sort of contradictory approaches. One is we're going to talk a lot about how you can be proactive and the things that you can do for yourself and take care of yourself and all of that. And then in the total, coming at it from the opposite direction, we're also going to say, and there are things that you don't have control over and you just have to accept. So those can seem opposite, but we have to come from both angles.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
I think people start talking about self-compassion, sometimes they have these ideas, or at least there's a block. It's like, I can't do that. That's fine for other people to practice that, but it's not okay for me. And maybe there's a lot of reasons why that it's not listed here of why you feel that way. But these are just a few where I think a lot of times people think of it as being something like self-pity, or often it's a sign of weakness. I don't see as weak if other people practice it, but it certainly would be a sign of weakness if I did. Maybe this is part of what you're talking about as well. If I practice this, it'll make me complacent. I won't be as productive. I won't be able to get things done.
That's a tough one. That's a really good example, Troy. That's a tough one to wrap your head around. Acceptance does not mean that you stop trying. It just means that you are okay with what's going on, with what's real, even though you still want what you want and you're still going to try and go after it. But people get confused with those two because it's a subtle difference, right? So I can really feel like, well, that means I'm not going to go for my goals anymore, and that's not the point.
Well, I'm trying to think if this is a good an example or not. I'll share it, and then if it's not, I'll cut it out. But I was thinking about this Thanksgiving. A lot of things happened. We ended up going to my daughter's house. She needed a new car, and so it was a change. And I had planned on doing a half marathon, and the half marathon I planned on doing, I couldn't do that one anymore. And so in our location, it changed. And so part of my complacency, or me having a chance to make it work the way I wanted it to, is we went to Costco and I bought Thanksgiving in a box. And maybe that was complacent, but it worked. And that gave me the freedom that even though it was in a different place, to pick a route and still do a half marathon on Thanksgiving Day. And so I spent majority, 2 hours and 46 minutes on Thanksgiving Day, starting out at 12 degrees in the morning and ending at 27 degrees in the afternoon, doing my half marathon. And I was able to make the things I wanted to have happen a priority. And maybe the Thanksgiving dinner wasn't the same thing I normally do. But we still.
Do you usually fix Thanksgiving?
My favorite thing to do is to smoke a turkey. I spend 12 hours smoking a turkey.
Gotcha.
This is the first year
You missed that part.
That's an important detail. But I thought that doing the marathon for myself was a more important goal.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's a great example.
That is. It's a good one. Yeah. And I just want to throw in there that you've got self-compassion is these things, but I think people feel that way about self-care.
Mm-hmm.
Self-care is self-pity. Self-care is weakness. Self-care will make me complacent. I think you can replace those words, interchangeably.
Absolutely.
Selfish.
Yeah. And even that fourth one, being narcissistic, I have to say, I'm so grateful that my family was so supportive. They really were. My daughter came out twice to check on me to make sure I was okay, and had water and the clothing I needed, and came and picked me up when I was done with the race. And there's times of me when I was racing, I thought that I was probably being a little selfish, because I knew everyone else was back. Of course, all they did was take the things out of the box and put them in the oven. But I was worried that I wasn't there doing that with them. But they were great. We got off the race. Everything was ready. I sat down. We had the Thanksgiving dinner, and then we all played games the rest of the night.
I think that's a good example of maybe not doing everything,
Hmm.
but being conscious of your priorities.
Mhm.
To bring it to what Maddie was saying about how this same list of myths here also applies to self-care. Um, you know, we do a lot of teaching with our clients that are here with us in Utah, and in trying to figure out how to bring some of that to the parents that we work with. Something that I'm always really conscious of is early on when I start working with parents, I want to tell them, uh, your kid is here, we've got things, and now is the time for you to look at what you can do for your own self-care. And everyone just sort of brushes it off. They're like, oh yeah, yeah, I'll do something. And I'm like, I've learned over the years that people say they're going to do stuff, but there's not a lot of follow through. And I think it's because of these things. They're like, I'm focused on my kid. My kid is the one with the problem, so I'm not going to do this stuff. I don't really need that. I don't know how to do it anyway. I'm too busy with other things. So looking at those things that are blocking you taking care of yourself. And now with parents, I often will assign something. I say, when you come back next week, I want to hear what you did to care for yourself that was proactive, because it really is a habit that a lot of us don't develop because of these very things.
Absolutely. In including our own therapy.
Mhm.
Yeah.
I'll jump around again because I did add this too. Is I think it's so important that we do make ourselves a priority and thinking about what are the things that we used to do, we used to love, that we're not doing, taking care of ourselves. What do we need to be doing for us? As related, I guess, to this week, I've been working with my doctor to take care of a few things, and we met a bunch of goals. So it was really a lot of fun to come and say, look at these goals I met. And he says, all right, Trey, let's look on the next thing we need to do, and that's your sleep.
Uh,
Mm.
And I thought that was really helpful for me to hear him talk to me about that. And that has now been the last week. One of my focuses is learning how to improve my sleep so that I can be even healthier for me, but also my family. And I feel the improvement already in one, it was probably been about a week and a half. And I can feel the improvement.
But I think, I'm a mom. I have raised a bunch of kids. And I think when I see the word yourself as a priority, I feel myself physically pull back. I'm not the priority. Everybody else is the priority. I am just the one who supplies the things that they need, and to take care of them. And so I can feel a sense of no. So it's like, kind of a feel. And I don't know if anybody who's watching this, as you're thinking about self care, if you feel that way, but it's really David nailed it earlier when he just said, if you aren't able to take care of yourself and able to replenish and feed yourself with nutrition and physical movement and nature and sleep and all of the things that are here on this list, then you're not going to be able to help other people. And it's the analogy is always the airline, put the mask on yourself first, and then you'll be able to help somebody next to you to get their mask on or whatever. And so it's like we're fighting. At least I am, fighting against this feeling of I'm not a priority. If I'm not making myself a priority, I'm not going to be as available to my family as I need to be or could be.
Mhm.
in outdoor education, we call that expedition mentality. It's the idea of you don't take care of yourself, you might crash the whole expedition.
Mhm.
uh, just as easily applicable to the family or to society in general. If you don't take care of yourself, you can't contribute much to society. And it's really interesting. I'm sure all the folks on presenting here have had this very experience in the field of some kid who gets a blister on their foot and they don't want to tell anybody. They don't want the group to have to stop hiking because they're worried people aren't going to care for them, aren't going to love them, aren't going to support them. They say, "Oh, you're just a wimp. You've got a blister. I don't want to stop for you." But if you don't do it and it gets worse, maybe that kid ends up with a bunch of blisters, and then the whole group can't hike for days because you're stuck dealing with this kid's blisters.
Mhm.
So um, sometimes we don't notice how we need to take care of ourselves in order to support the group until it's at that catastrophe. Someone asked me like maybe a year ago what self care is, and this is sort of the my go to. And this is what I pointed them towards. I'm not sure who asked, but what's interesting is that over the years, or maybe it's just the past year, I'm not sure. I keep seeing this in different. Um, the, the first time I saw it, it was just the first sentence, and then the second time I saw it, is the second sentence was in there, and then we were going to this presentation, and I was thinking about putting this slide in. I looked it up, and I found this whole version, and I think it's really powerful. And I think this is um, in many ways, the elephant in the room in modern psychotherapy is that in order to feel better, you may have to do stuff that you don't like doing. You may have to change something. Just because you like it doesn't necessarily mean that it's good for you. And you do really have to do those things. You have to incorporate them into your life. It's got to be your life that provides health for you. It's really a holistic way of looking at self care. So that's really why I like this quote.
It's good. Tell me a little bit more about the idea of doing what you don't want to do.
Doing the stuff that you don't want to do.
Mhm.
I think I used this example last time, but I teach yoga at Legacy to most of our clients at some point or another. Will take a yoga class with me or do it frequently. And young men, the young men we work with, it's not exactly their favorite thing, yoga. Most of them don't have a lot of experience with it, and they associate it with their mom. So it's like not very cool, right? Um, but I think yoga is one of the best things that anyone can do for their self care. It's meditation. It's meditation that works better for people who have a hard time sitting still, who are anxious, who maybe have ADHD. It can be much better than trying to sit in place and meditate. So sometimes clients will come to me after I've been encouraging them to do yoga or sort of giving them a hard time because maybe they did half the class and then walked out or just laid down and slept. And I say, hey, you're not doing it. And they say, oh, but you like yoga. That's why you do it. And I said, no, I don't like yoga. I don't ever get in my car really excited to get to my yoga class. I just go and do it because it's good for me. I have to do it. I have to do it for my self care. And often, I in a non-COVID world, I go to a lot of yoga classes, and sometimes 15, 20 minutes into the yoga class, I'll be like, oh man, why am I here? I don't want to be here. This is hard. I could be doing something else. And I'm like, okay, but you can stick it. You can stick through it. You can get through it. And then at the end, I always feel better. And that's sort of what this speaks to is that you've got to do these things that are not comfortable or may not feel good in the moment in order to take care of yourself. And there's so many different ways that concept shows up in life. You could easily apply that to homework or work or um, I don't know exactly what else. What do you guys think? Where else would it apply?
Well, I think for me, it applies when it comes to nutrition. It's I came to the realization. I mean, I've thought this before, but I realized that my self care was killing me because my self care involved a lot of eating non-nutritional and comfort foods that made me feel worse, make me feel crappy, and then I gain weight, and then I don't have the energy, and then I feel bad about myself. I mean, it's just it's like this kind of a demon dialogue with myself, of going around and around and around. And so when I think about it, I think about what I least want to do is to really look at my nutritional habits and make some major changes in my life in order to be able to take care of myself. Because if I keep doing the chocolate cake that you mentioned right here or it's in this quote, it's I'm going to actually die younger. It's not going to help.
maybe at the core of this idea, just to boil it down a little bit, is the idea that self-care is not necessarily things that feel good.
Yeah, there you go.
It's great to do things that feel good, and we should all absolutely do them. That's an important part of life, but it's not necessarily what self-care is.
There you go.
There are so many different things that we ask the kids to do here that are basic for their self-care. And although they sound like things that people like, there's often an interesting contrast. Parents look at these things and they say, "You're outside, you're exercising, you're eating regularly, you're socializing," but we're not necessarily used to doing that. So although those sound like those things that people enjoy, they're not always enjoyable as you're doing them. So that one's interesting. I also think for family members, having your child come to treatment can be a bit of a wake up call to things that maybe you've been doing that you have not been paying attention to. Habits, routines that you have, just ways of living your life that are really never going to support your holistic health and are possible to change, even though you might not have considered it. It might be really scary. Um, it might be something totally new that you never even thought of. But taking the time to investigate that can make a real difference in your ability to care for yourself.
And this is a really pivotal time, or a perfect time to be able to look at this, because I've had so many parents that have said, I had the best night's sleep last night that I've had for the last 10 years because I knew my kid was safe, and I knew I wasn't going to get that call from the police saying, he was, dead in a ditch, or something horrible, and that I finally can just, relax and be, that he's safe. And then, it's just been, really beneficial for me. But by having that space, then this is why it's so important, what you always do, with your clients that you're talking about, is David, is that, okay, so you're taking a deep breath, and you are, allowing yourself to have a little bit of time to notice what tension you've been in. Sometimes we don't even realize how tense we are until we can, tense and relax, like progressive muscle relaxation. And then all of a sudden you realize how tense I've been for the last 10 years. And then is a perfect time to be able to start looking at all of these things: negative habits, relationships, all of these things that I need to do in order to be able to strengthen myself and to be able to be ready for the next stage of whatever we're going to be doing, with my son or daughter.
I was in a family sculpting therapy session today. Troy, you would be proud. We got through a lot of interesting family sculptures. But we ended up having a discussion about the idea that if one thing changes in the family system, it forces change in the rest of the system. And this is particularly important for parents to understand. If you change what you're doing and you stick with it, you're resolute in doing something different, guaranteed it will create some sort of change in the rest of the system. And maybe you change what your spouse is doing in your relationship with your spouse. Maybe if you change um, your relationship with your spouse, it forces change in the relationship that you two have with your child. It's not a known factor, right? We can't always control the effect, but if one person decides to get healthier, it usually has it sort of resonates throughout the system.
I had an experience like that with a family session today, and um, and the mom said, basically, I'm so proud that you are doing these things, and what you're causing is a cascade effect throughout all of our family. We're all noticing something different. That's something that we didn't realize before. And it's like this, so I need to do this, and I need to do this, and I need to work on this. And it's really impacting the entire family. Um, and and she was just bringing up the point that she was just proud that her son was willing to go to a place that no one else has been willing to go to, and as a result, it's having an impact across the board.
Yeah. So, but you and I were saying there, Maddie, I think we're speaking to it broadly, and you reminded me of a very common situation that is sort of a specific example of this idea, I often tell parents that the best thing they can do to help their child is to work on their own anxiety.
Yeah.
Um, your child triggering your anxiety and your anxiety being unmanageable, um, and you responding and just jumping in to fix things, or being really worked up because you can't deal with the anxiety that comes up for you, that causes a lot of problem in the system. It can create this reciprocal effect, where the child is not taking care of themselves. You're stepping in to take care of the child, and then they learn that they can't take care of themselves, and it just goes sort of back and forth, and you pass the anxiety around. So, it's just another example of how your own self care really affects the rest of the system.
And part of the thing that I think parents are resistant to, and I'm gonna name this, is that is doing therapy themselves. Doing therapy is a scary thing. It takes a lot of courage to step into a therapy office and start talking to somebody about the stuff that you have. But I can't believe the number of times I'm identifying trauma in one of my clients, and the parent said, "Well, let me tell you about mine." you know, this is what happened to me. It was the exact same thing when I was similar age, whatever. And I always go, so, what does that indicate that needs to happen? And they go, oh yeah, I should probably go get therapy. I go, no, you shouldn't probably go do it. You damn well better do it. It's like, go take care of this, because it's not going to get better if you don't do the work that you need to do yourself. And it's scary to put yourself in a place to actually go do that. So you're going to have to overcome some fear and do what you don't want to do, just like we said earlier, in order to be able to take care of yourself in that process.
I was thinking about a parent that I'm working with right now that has a son in treatment. And she came in to do her work. And the biggest thing that she's trying to change is feeling responsible for everything, to fix it, to, learning just to have, I think what you have here is what the healthy detachment looks like. That last one, David, she's trying to figure that out. She's trying to figure like, I want to, we're practicing how to express, I love you and I'm connected to you, but this is yours, not mine. And not letting her anxiety confuse that, and her dealing with her anxiety, not trying to own his or fix hers through fixing him.
That goes back to something we were talking about earlier, this idea that you can be involved and work towards your goals, but you can also have acceptance about where things are, so that you don't get so anxious and worked up about what's happening in the moment. That's a really important part of some sort of detachment.
I think we probably talked about those as well.
Yeah.
Okay. I've already gone there. Mindfulness or self-compassion, actually both. We talk about mindfulness as a focus primarily on acceptance of the experience itself, but self-compassion focuses more on the caring of the experiencer. I'm not sure if I spelled that right, but caring for the experiencing
Me.
Yeah, mindfulness asks, what am I experiencing right now? And that's what you're talking about, I think, with yoga. What am I experiencing right now? Self-compassion says, what do I need right now? And like long-term need, because the short-term answer is chocolate.
Yep, that's for me.
Right? Well, you're not the only one. This is what you're talking about earlier. Like the short-term says to relax. The long-term says I need to go for a run. The first couple of miles of that run, it sucks.
It always sucks. Yep.
Yeah.
This one gets confused a lot as clients start to learn some of these ideas. You'll see kids who are in treatment say, I'm not going to do this thing I don't want to do because that's not self-care.
Right.
We start to introduce this idea of boundaries, and they get misconstrued. They say anything I don't like, I'm going to have a boundary that I'm not going to do that. And you're like, that's not exactly how this idea works.
I just had this thought, this memory as you're talking about that, which is help me out with the movie. It's Pixar. It's Wall-E.
Mm-hmm.
You know, if I was just doing what felt good in the moment for self-care, I'd be on that ship just eating my smoothie and riding my chair around instead of trying to get to the gym and walking around and building the strength that I need for the next leg of my journey. Mindfulness says, fill your suffering with spacious awareness. Self-compassion says, be kind to yourself when you suffer. And back to making ourselves a priority. Because if we're not making ourselves a priority, we're not in the shape that we need to be in, both physically and mentally, to be there and show up for our family and those we care about, our work, in the way that they are going to need from us.
It's therapy and all the things that therapists say can be really complicated, and all these concepts and things. For so many folks, it's the basics that are on this slide that are going to help them with most of their depression and most of their anxiety, and maybe a variety of other issues, if you just really focus in on the basics. Not going to guarantee anything, but it's a really important place to start, and it often gets overlooked. Sometimes the solution is really just not some complicated process. It's really just exercise a little more.
This is the Depression Cure book, where he, these are the elements that can cure depression without medication, and these are the things that he emphasizes for sure. And it's interesting because many of these things are a part of the wilderness program, So then what we're trying to do is get the parents to be able to get those elements happening for them on a regular basis at home.
Which is tough. It's tough because it often conflicts with our other priorities.
Right.
Working all day gets in the way of
Yep.
doing a bunch of exercise.
It's true.
That can be really hard. And it is a large part of the explanation of why wilderness therapy works so quickly and effectively. We do really meet these basics right away, especially the last one on this list, the social connection. Is so much more available when you're with people all the time. And in our modern lives, we're separated in so many ways. We're separated with walls, we're separated with electronics, a million other things. So really being with people does make you feel better.
Which is one of the reasons why COVID is a double disease. It's a disease, but it's a disease a social disease that's going to have an impact on people, and it is having an impact on people. Yeah. Because it does limit our social connections.
Yeah. Something you're saying, David, made me think of something I probably could put on the slide, which is part of mindfulness too, which is learning to be in the present moment. Because I think we look at this priority list and we instantly go to the future. And we think, I want to do this. I plan on doing that. I have intentions of doing this, but maybe not right now. And so, learning to be in the moment and say, I need to be doing, what am I going to do right now for myself in these areas?
Yeah.
I have a to-do list on my phone. It, I think, has literally a few hundred things on it. And about number 50 it just says, phone use as dissociation. I scroll through my to-do list and I'm like, oh, I should stop looking at my to-do list.
That's good.
Well, this is our last slide. It feels like a to-do list, but here's some. I'll put in the notes below a link to these slides that have their links to some of them are MP3 files. Some of them are YouTube videos that go through some meditations like breathing, a loving kindness meditation, and some of them are some lists of how to do some self-care during COVID.
Good.
So my encouragement is pick one and do it. Also, go to therapy.
Yep.
You have to experiment. I think when I recommend self-care techniques, I usually go with what works for me because that's what I know. And you can hit a lot of the basics there, but everyone's needs are a little different. And the things that are going to work for one person are not necessarily going to work for another. And you really have to experiment. You have to put some time into trying a bunch of different things and figuring out something that works for you, something that's possible as a routine. Um, yeah, it is a practice getting to that point in itself. It's not just like, okay, here are the three things, I'm done. It's going to take a while.
Mhm. So have some compassion as you're finding those solutions.
Mhm. If you made it this far in the video, I imagine that you really have some desire for some self-care and self-compassion. Thanks for joining us, and do some of these things and notice the impact it's having on you, and do them some more.
Right. Thank you.
Thanks.
See you.
Bye, everybody.
Bye-bye.